I was locked up in a CCA facility, back when they still called themselves that, before they rebranded to Core Civic, like changing the name would wipe away the filth. Everyone in there knew the truth. The place was a machine for holding bodies and cutting costs. If you had medical problems, you better pray they were mild, because no one in that building gave a damn until you were already half dead. There was a guy in our pod, mid-30s, quiet, not a troublemaker, but he started having this issue, testicular pain. At first, he tried to tough it out. We all do. But after a few days of walking like he had glass in his shorts, he started going to sick call. Filled out the slips, waited in line. The nurses told him they'd refer him to the doctor, the usual dance. But here's the thing. In that place, getting referred to a doctor didn't mean anything. It meant you might be seen in 6 weeks. Maybe. It meant they might give you ibuprofen and tell you to rest. Meanwhile, this man's ball kept swelling. He walked, hunched over like he had been hit in the gut. He stopped sleeping. You'd hear him groaning quietly at night, curled up in the bunk, trying not to make a scene. Nobody helped him. For weeks, he asked, begged, filed grievances, got ignored. And then one night, he broke. I didn't see it start. No one did. It was lights out, but you could still hear movement, metal bunks creaking, low murmurs from the usual guys who couldn't sleep. Then someone turned on the shower. At first, no one cared. Some guys like to stand under the hot water at night. Helps pass time. But the water stayed running for a while. Too long. Then came the sound of something scraping. Not a shuffle. Not a footstep. Something harder. I got up. Not because I knew what was happening, but because something didn't feel right. That heavy gut feeling you get before everything flips. He had taken one of the plastic chairs from the pod, the kind with holes in the back and thin legs. He dragged it into the shower stool and sat down under the water. Then he took apart a disposable razor, snapped out the blade, just a thin piece of metal barely thicker than a paperclip. And then he cut open his own scrotum. No yelling, no screaming, just deliberate cutting. He reached inside and pulled out his left testicle. The guys in the closest cells were up now. One of them shouted for a guard. Another threw up. Blood started pouring out of the shower stall and pooling near the drain. It didn't look real. It looked like someone had dumped paint on the tile. I didn't see the moment he cut it out, but one of my close friends did. He was sitting in medical, waiting to be seen for a different issue. Sick call, they called it. Just another morning of inmates lining up to get ignored. There was a knock at the door. My friend told me later, he thought someone was just being impatient. Maybe banging because they didn't want to wait in line. Then came a second knock. Louder, faster, not angry, urgent. The door opened, and there he was. The man from our pod, pale as paper, shirt soaked in red, holding a small white medicine cup in both hands. Inside the cup was his testicle. He didn't scream, didn't cry. He just looked at the nurse and said, as calm as someone reporting a spill in the hallway, "Sorry to interrupt your sick call. I fixed my problem, but I can't stop the bleeding." Then he set the cup down on the nurse's cart and collapsed against the wall. Security came running. The nurses scrambled. Someone radioed for transport. They wrapped him in towels. They tried to stop the bleeding. The hallway looked like a scene from a horror movie. My friend said he had never seen that much blood come from a person who was still breathing. Back in the pod, word spread fast. Guards ran into the showers with gloves and bleach. One of them cursed, loud enough for everyone to hear. They made us all go on lockdown while they cleaned it. But you could still see the smears. The red streaks down the hallway, the handprint on the glass near the exit. No one said anything for a long time. Guys just sat in their bunks, staring at nothing. We found out later that the man survived, barely. They had to rush him to a real hospital in Nashville. He lost so much blood they thought his heart would stop, but he pulled through. The story hit the local news. They didn't use his name, but everyone on the inside knew. It became one of those whispered stories that spread through every unit. New guys would ask, "Is it true?" And the ones who were there would just nod. Some laughed about it, said it was the craziest thing they ever heard. Others shook their heads and said he should have waited. But me? I still remember the way he said it. I fixed my problem. That line stuck with me. Because, in a twisted way, he did. He asked for help. He waited. He followed the rules. No one listened. So he took control the only way he knew how. Not out of rage. Not for show. Just a quiet, brutal choice made in a place that gave him nothing else. He could have died. But maybe in his head, dying was better than staying trapped in a system that wouldn't even let him sit with a real doctor. After that, the guards were different, tighter, more nervous. The sick call started moving a little faster for a while. Like the staff got scared they might be next if another inmate decided to fix himself. But the system didn't change. Not really. I made a friend early on who was serving a life sentence for killing a man. From what he told me, and what others confirmed, the man he killed had been caught touching his niece. He did not even hesitate. He caught the guy, beat him to death, and waited for the police. He told them everything. No lawyer, no bargaining, just take him away. When I first met him, he had already been down for 5 or 6 years. He was quiet, older than me, by maybe 10 years, but we clicked. We talked nearly every day. It was one of those friendships that builds without you realizing it. You are both stuck in this place where everything is fake and tense, and then someone just sits down next to you one day, offers a piece of candy, and you start talking. And you never stop. He never made himself bigger than he was. He never tried to act like a badass, or tell war stories like some of the others did. If anything, he was humble. He would say things like, "I should be here. I'm not looking for pity." That was the kind of man he was. Just calm, solid. The type of person you could trust with your thoughts, in a place where your thoughts could get you hurt. We had that kind of friendship for about 3 years. We walked the yard together, ate chow together, and kept each other grounded when shit got dark. Then one day, he comes up to me and says he needs to talk. His eyes were already red when he found me. We start doing a lap around the back 40, just walking like usual, but his voice was off, shaky. He tells me that his old lady is leaving him. That she is done. Not only that, but she is not bringing his daughter to come see him anymore. She told him over a call the night before. Said she needed to move on. Said the girl was getting older and she did not want to keep putting her through these visits. I did not know what to say. The man had been holding it together for years. His daughter was all he had left. I just walked next to him while he talked, and when his voice broke, I let him cry. I told him maybe she would come around, that sometimes people say things in the moment and regret them later. He nodded, wiped his face. We finished our lap and sat outside for a bit, then went back in like nothing happened. For the rest of the day, he was normal. Or at least he looked normal. He joked a little during dinner, played spades later on. But that night, after lights out, I heard him crying again. His cell was directly across from mine. The sound was low at first, just sobs. Then I heard my name. I got up and stood at my door. He was standing in his cell back against the wall, talking to me through the bars. He said he wanted to die. He said he was glad I was up because he did not want to be alone. His face was soaked and his voice sounded empty. I told him to calm down, that we would talk in the morning, that it was not worth it. He shook his head and said he was done. I started slamming the panic button in my cell, over and over, screaming for a CO. Nothing. No response. Sometimes they sleep through the night shifts. Sometimes they ignore it, thinking it is bullshit. I kept hitting the button anyway. He was still talking, but I could barely hear him. Then he turned around and started working on the mirror attached to his wall. He ripped it out with this strength I had never seen in him before. Just pulled it loose. One corner snapped off, then the rest. He wrapped his linens and blankets around himself like a giant robe. It was hard to see through the darkness, but I saw him kneel down. Then he started cutting his stomach. At first, it was quiet. Then I heard him grunt. I saw the shadows move. The way he hunched, I screamed his name, begged him to stop. He did not. The blood smell hit me a few seconds later. That metallic, warm scent. I could barely see what he was doing because of how the blankets draped over him, but I knew. I kept screaming, kept hitting the panic. No one came. And then the fire started. He lit the blanket. It caught fast. The cell lit up in a flash. Orange and red light spilling into the hallway. That is what finally triggered the smoke alarm. The whole unit started panicking. Doors started buzzing. Guards yelling. Water pouring from the sprinklers. They got into his cell maybe 2 or 3 minutes after the alarm went off, but it was too late. He had bled out. His body was burned on one side from where the fire caught. His eyes were still open. And I will never forget the smell. Blood, smoke, and something else. Something that clung to my clothes for days after. I had to stand there in my cell the entire time, watching through the bars while they tried to revive him. They were shouting commands. Someone ran in with a cart. Another guard tried to pull him clear of the flames. One of the nurses on duty almost slipped in the blood. They tried, but he was gone, and all I could do was stand there, still wet from the sprinklers, still shaking, still hearing his voice say he was glad I was up because he did not want to be alone. They moved me the next day to a different unit, said I needed to be somewhere quiet for a while. A counsellor came to talk to me. I barely said anything. What was I going to say? That I watched my friend bleed out and burn to death because no one came when I called for help? That the one guy in this place I could actually trust was just gone now? I do not even know how long I stayed quiet. Weeks maybe. Some guys asked me what happened. I just shook my head. Others already knew. Rumours spread fast in there. What stuck with me the most was how normal the day had been. He laughed during dinner. He cracked a joke during cards. No one saw it coming. Maybe I should have. Maybe I should have pushed harder when he told me about his daughter. Maybe I should have stayed awake that night. I do not know. All I know is that I still dream about it. I hear myself yelling for him to stop. I see the light from the fire flicker across his cell. I feel that panic when the alarm does not go off. I smell that blood and smoke all over again, and I feel helpless every single time. I have seen a lot of messed up things inside. Fights, stabbings, suicides, men getting jumped in the showers, guards breaking bones. You learn to numb yourself, to keep a straight face no matter what. But this one broke something in me. There are rules in prison that no one writes down. You learn them by watching, by shutting up, by keeping your eyes open without letting them lock onto anything for too long. Most of those rules are about survival, but some of them are darker. Some of them teach you just how easy it is to lose everything over nothing. We were in the yard after lunch, late summer, sun beating down on everything. That thick, humid kind of heat that makes the yard smell like sweat and concrete. Some guys were walking laps. Others lifted weights on rusted metal, welded into the ground. Me? I was sitting near the far fence, back against the wall, trying to stay out of everyone's path. I saw a guy walk over to one of the small trees that lined the edge of the yard. There aren't many, just thin, sad-looking trees that were probably planted to make the place look less like a cage. He reached up, grabbed a low branch, and cracked it clean off. No one paid attention. Not the other inmates, not the guards, just another bored man in a hot yard. But I kept watching. Something about how deliberate he was. He walked to a dry patch of concrete and sat down. He held the stick in both hands like it meant something. Then he leaned forward and started grinding the end against the pavement, slow and steady, over and over. The sound of it got buried under the noise of the yard. It didn't look like much, just a man messing with wood. But he wasn't just passing time, he was making something. I don't know how long he sat there, but when he stood up, that stick was no longer a stick. It was a weapon, dried by the Sunday, sharpened down to a long, pointed edge, thin enough to puncture, strong enough to kill. He didn't hide it, just held it low against his thigh and started walking. Not fast, not slow. That focused kind of walk that tells you nothing good is about to happen. The guy he was walking toward didn't see him. He was standing near the bench press station, talking to a few others, laughing about something. No tension, no beef, at least not that I knew of. Nothing boiling, nothing brewing. Then the stickman got close. He raised his arm just enough to clear the angle, and then he drove that sharpened piece of wood straight into the man's back. 4 times. No screaming. Just that heavy thud of wood meeting flesh. Then again. Then again. Then once more. The man dropped to his knees like his body stopped working. His hands reached behind him, but there was nothing to grab. Blood started soaking through his shirt almost instantly, and by the time he hit the ground, the guy with the stick was already walking away. Calm, like he had just finished a chore. That's when the yard broke. Guards started yelling. Sirens went off. People scattered to the far edges. Some dropped flat to the ground with their hands behind their heads. Others ran for cover. I stayed where I was, frozen, watching the guy who got stabbed twitch on the concrete while his blood puddled beneath him. He couldn't breathe. You could see it. He was gasping like a fish on dry land. His chest heaved, but nothing was working right. The guards tried to press towels to the wounds, but the blood kept coming. Thick, dark, too much. The stick had gone deep. Someone radioed for medical, but we all knew the infirmary inside wouldn't be enough. When the helicopter finally came, the noise drowned everything. Dust kicked up across the yard. They loaded the man onto a stretcher with a mask over his face. His eyes weren't open. They airlifted him straight to a hospital. That part was almost normal. Violence that bad gets a helicopter. What wasn't normal was how little anyone understood why it had happened. They cuffed the guy who did it right there in the yard, took him down hard, dragged him across the concrete while he stared straight ahead. Didn't say a word, no resistance, no fear. Just a kind of emptiness that was more chilling than rage ever could be. Word spread later that the two men had exchanged words the day before. Something minor. A joke taken wrong. A stare held too long. No one knew for sure. But whatever it was, the attacker had taken it home with him, sat on it overnight, and then decided to make a weapon out of a stick just to send a message. That message almost killed a man. The stick had punctured one of his lungs, missed his spine by inches. They said if the last stab had been even half an inch deeper, he would have died right there in the yard. As it was, he spent a week in the hospital, then came back with a chest tube and stitches like a zipper down his back. He didn't talk much after that, just sat in the day room staring at the wall like he was still trying to make sense of it all. I don't think he ever did. The guy who stabbed him got thrown into the hole. Not for a week, not for a month, indefinitely. Last I heard, they transferred him to another facility entirely, higher security. They gave him a psych eval, but nothing ever came of it. No one visited him. No one missed him. That tree got cut down a few weeks later. They claimed it was diseased, but we all knew the real reason. It wasn't about the tree. It was about the idea that you could make something deadly out of nothing. That a man could take a dry piece of wood and turn it into a life sentence. I still sit sometimes and think about that moment, about how fast it all happened. People think prison is just a place where time stops, a long, dull wait. But they're wrong. Prison is a place where everything can change in seconds, over something stupid. My first day in county jail, they processed us all like meat, strip, bend over, spread, cough, no eye contact, no small talk, just cold instructions and a line of naked men trying to pretend this was all normal. That's when the warning came, not from an inmate, from the staff. Never joke about suicide, the officer said, without looking up. We do not play about that. You say it, you mean it, you get dealt with. Simple enough, like not shouting fire in a theatre or bomb on an airplane. Everyone nodded, even the guys trying to act hard. By day 3, I had found my place. Not high up, not low, just enough space to avoid attention. I was the biggest white guy in the pod. That meant something. Not respect, but a kind of default anchor. So the younger white kids flocked to my table during meals. Not because they liked me, but because it gave them cover. You don't mix in jail unless you want problems. White, black, brown, 3 teams. Doesn't matter what you believe outside. Once those doors close behind you, it becomes the only structure left. In our group, there was one kid who didn't belong. Maybe in life, definitely not in jail. He had this weird, stunted energy, like a 12-year-old trapped in a grown man's body. Hyper, loud, always asking questions no one cared about. He couldn't sit still, couldn't read a room. I don't know if it was a learning issue or something worse, but it was clear from day one he wasn't wired like the rest of us. And everyone knew that was going to be a problem. I pulled him aside early. I tried to lay it out plain, told him this wasn't a place for jokes, that the safest thing he could do was disappear, become background, be forgettable. Just eat, sleep, and wait for the exit. He nodded like he understood. But the next day, he was back to singing in the pod like it was a playground. After a week, it finally happened. He was in the shower when he lost it, singing some song at the top of his lungs, doing impressions, dancing like he was on stage. Then, as if that wasn't enough, he squatted down and took a shit right there on the floor of the shower. Laughed while he did it. The other guys bolted, grabbed their towels, got the hell out. I stood there at the edge of the pod, frozen, not shocked, just drained. Like watching someone deliberately dig their own grave, scoop by scoop. Then it got worse. He didn't just leave it. He started kicking the shit around, smeared it on the walls, flicked it into the other stalls with his bare feet, like it was a game. After that, I didn't shower for the rest of my stay, truth be told. Eventually, the trustees came in with gloves and bleach. They weren't even mad, just disgusted. No one said a word to the kid. He was locked in a small holding cell near the showers, laughing so hard he was wheezing, like it was all still a prank, like we were all in on it together. But we weren't, not anymore. By the next morning, everything had changed. You could see it on every face. They weren't annoyed, they weren't amused, they hated him now. Eyes that used to ignore him now followed him with that blank, waiting stare, like they were just looking for the excuse to go hands-on. At breakfast, no one sat with him, not even the younger white boys who used to try and tolerate his antics. I stopped looking at him altogether. I just kept my head down. We all did. The change in him was fast, like a switch flipped. No more singing, no more jokes. His face got pale, shoulders sank. He started mumbling to himself in the corner, talking at the guards like they were his only chance at connection. And then he said it. He told one of the COs that maybe he should hurt himself. Maybe if he disappeared, everyone else would be happy. That was all it took. The pod went dead quiet when they brought it out. The blue burrito. I had heard about it, but I thought it was just a story, something told to new fish to keep them from acting out. But no, it was real, and it was worse than anything I imagined. 10 feet long, thick blue foam, 2 massive red straps trailing behind it. It looked like something you'd use in a gym class, if gym class was run by people who didn't give a shit whether you lived or died. They laid it out in the middle of the floor like a body bag, told him to lie down. He didn't fight, he didn't cry. Just laid there on his back, arms at his sides, looking up at the ceiling like he already knew he was about to disappear. Then they rolled him, not gently, not with care. They rolled him up tight, the foam wrapping around his body like a straitjacket. The red straps clipped together at the top and bottom. No way to move, no way to fight it. Just a human being trapped in a tube. No therapy, no observation, no med checks, just full immobilization for a suicide comment. They dragged the burrito into his cell, rolled it onto the cold floor, slammed the door, and walked off. He stayed like that for 12 hours. 12 hours with his arms pinned to his sides. No pillow, no blanket, no way to shift his weight, no way to stretch. Just stuck in that claustrophobic foam tube, breathing in his own stale air. I was in the cell above him, couldn't see him, but I could hear everything. He didn't scream, he didn't beg, he just wept. Low, broken sobs. A kind of hurt I had never heard before. Not pain, not even fear. Just defeat. Like something inside him had snapped. No one else reacted. We all lay in our bunks pretending we didn't hear it, because if we did, it meant we were human again. And that was dangerous in a place like this. They pulled him out the next morning, unrolled him like a dirty sleeping bag. He didn't say a word, didn't even blink. He didn't smile anymore, didn't talk, didn't sing. He just sat by himself in the corner, arms crossed, head down, eyes empty. The burrito broke him. Whatever kid-like joy he had clung to, whatever delusion he had about jail being a game or a phase, it was gone now, and no one helped him put it back together. I spent 6 years locked up in one of the hardest prisons in the state. Violence was normal. You got used to seeing blood on the floor like it was water from a leaking pipe. But there was one thing I saw during my first month that carved itself into my memory. A moment so raw and so terrifying that I still think about it every single day. It was a Tuesday. That is the part I remember clearly. Chow had just ended and the block was loud. Guys were yelling, some playing cards, others walking laps just to stay sane. Then, all of a sudden, the noise changed. It got quiet, but not peaceful. I looked over and saw a group of men surrounding someone in the far corner near the showers. At first, I thought it was just a fight. That was common. You keep your head down, mind your business. But then I saw the knives. Not one or two, there were 5 or 6 of them, homemade blades, sharpened from metal scraps and toothbrush handles. The guy in the middle was already on the ground by the time I focused. He was curled up tight, arms around his head, trying to shield himself. The stabbing started fast. No yelling, no warnings. Just repeated, calculated thrusts. Over and over. In his back, his sides, his legs. The floor turned red under him. And through all of it, he kept screaming the same thing. Help. That one word, over and over, like it could actually save him. Help, help, help. But no one moved. We all just stood there, frozen. Not because we did not want to do something, but because we knew exactly what would happen if we did. If you stepped in, you were next. That was prison math. Interfere. And they make an example out of you, too. Nobody wanted to be that example. So we watched. They stabbed him more than 60 times. That is not an exaggeration, I counted in my head. 1, 2, 3, until I lost track in the teens. His body was shaking, twitching. His voice cracked after the 20th stab, but he never stopped saying it. Even as he bled out and went limp, he kept whispering that word. Help. Eventually the guards showed up. They always take their time. By the time they got there, the attackers had already disappeared back into the crowd, blending in like nothing happened. Everyone scattered. That is how it works. You never saw anything. You do not know anything. That is how you stay alive. I do not know how that guy survived. He did though. Word got around later that he made it to the infirmary and pulled through, but no one ever saw him again. They transferred him to another facility. Maybe for protection. Maybe because they knew he was marked. Nobody said a word about it afterward. Nobody dared. What hit me the hardest was not the blood or the violence. It was how normal it felt. How quickly it happened. How fast you could go from standing on your feet to begging for your life on the floor. And even more than that, how nobody could help you. Not because they were evil, but because they were scared. Every time I close my eyes, I hear him. That voice. That one word, stuck on repeat like a broken tape in my brain. Help. And it never came. 6 years I did in that place. But that one moment from the first month has stayed with me longer than anything else.